Okay, so we are devotees beginning a seminar on Bhakti Shastri level on Nectar of Devotion, the eastern side of the ocean. Let us begin first with some prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravadi Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachade Shatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The curtains should open. I think they will open in a few seconds. Yes. So, where are we? Here we are. All right. So here we go. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. How nice. How wonderful. Darshan. And we're intending to do the program every evening here. So you'll all get darshan. You'll all get darshan of Radha Radhanath and Lord Caitanya. So, first of all, we have to make four announcements. Please listen. Those of you who have registered for the Bhakti Shastri, for Nectar of Devotion, for a credit towards Bhakti Shastri. So, you would have received a registration email with the course information and instructions. If you have not received this, please email Nectar of Devotion, all one, Nectar of Devotion at bcais.net. I hope you got that. Nectar of Devotion at bcais.net. The admin team will send through this email address on the chat. Okay? Right, so regarding online platforms, we will continue having our classes on Facebook and Instagram with Russian translation on Instagram. Our course material and assessments will be on the Nectar of Devotion Google Classroom. On Google Classroom, please, students, have your names match the names you have registered with. This is important as we'll need the correct information when marking the course work. For those who are not on Google Classroom and need assistance, you can write to the email address provided. I guess that's nectarofdevotion@bcais.net, and someone will assist. On Saturdays, we'll be having group discussions and revision. This will be on the Zoom platform. All the relevant information is in the registration email that has been sent out. So, 3, course assessments. The breakdown. Self-study questions per chapter. Now, I hope you get this. This is not for assessment purposes, but for revision for the final test. The self-study questions They're not for assessment purposes, but for revision for that final test. These answers will be discussed in the group sessions. Questionnaires after every chapter. These are mandatory, means you must do these, as these will track attendance. There will be 2 exams, blissful exams. Oh, you'll love them. Chapter questions, analogies, and verses. One will be halfway through the course and another at the end. There will be 2 essay questions to be submitted by the end of the course. And finally, the questionnaire for tracking attendance. There is a requirement of 80% minimum attendance for this course. We will be tracking your attendance by a questionnaire with multiple choice questions on Google Classroom, which will appear after every chapter. These are compulsory, so please be aware of this. These are the main points we'd like to communicate with all of you students today. Okay, so there you go. I hope that's clear enough. Whatever's not clear, if anything is not clear, contact that email address I gave you, which I'll just give you again. Nectar of Devotion, all one, at bcais.net. All right. So here we go. Now we're starting this course. Let us start by chanting, and every evening we will chant the dedication right at the beginning of Nectar of Devotion. It's a verse from the Shad Goswami Astakam, written by Srila Srinivas Acharya. Yes, very beautiful verses glorifying the 6 Goswamis. So this one verse appears at the beginning of Nectar of Devotion. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipano Saddharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako. So the translation. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the 3 worlds, and they're worth taking shelter of because they're absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. So that's our dedication. Yes, so devotees. First of all, well, we have sent you actually, as far as I'm aware, what we call our, oops, where is it? Just a second. Where has it gone? Oops, not that one. Our outline of the whole course. It's a very simple outline, but an outline it is. And, okay, here it is. Yes, so I'm just going to touch on a few things, a couple of things, right at the beginning of that outline. So the first point, very important point to understand what we're actually doing, is that there are 4 parts to Nectar of Devotion. It's taken to be, of course, according to Srila Rupa Goswami, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of nectar, of devotion. And every ocean, of course, has 4 sides, east, south, west, and north. So similarly, this book has 4 sides, or 4 sections, and this sort of terminology is used, that each of the 4 sections is one side of the ocean of nectar, of devotion. The first part, what we are doing from the very beginning, the preface, through to and including chapter 19, this is the eastern side. Then the second part from chapter 22, what is it? I think 35, maybe 34, something like that, is the southern side. We are not doing that. We are doing the eastern side from the beginning, from the preface, through the introduction, and then through chapter 1 and on to chapter 19. So the structure is as follows. And you should be aware of this. It really helps to get to grasp what is going on in the seminar if you know what the structure is. So first of all, there is, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? All right. Can you hear me okay? All right. If you can't, come closer. Yeah. We leave that up to you. So first of all, there is the preface, which we're going to start going through this evening. We'll see, but I assume it will take a couple of evenings to go through. It's actually very important, and it's very wonderful. The preface is written by Srila Prabhupada. It's not part of the sort of the greater book, his summary study of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Nectar of Devotion, the terminology Prabhupada used was a summary study of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Srila Rupa Goswami. Summary study, the basic idea is, well, summary kind of speaks for itself, that it's not like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Caitanya Charitamrita, which you're all familiar with, where you've got the verses. Every verse is there. The verse itself, then the word for word, translation, and then a purport. So Nectar of Devotion has been done in a different way, that basically all the verses are there, but they're not laid out in that fashion. All that is there is the translation which is sort of merged, if I may use a term which is we're often not very fond of, but kind of just merged in with the explanation and then other verses like that. It's not broken down so much. There definitely are a number of verses here and there in which it's pointed out, this is such and such verse, and then the translation is given. But to a pretty large extent, everything's kind of merged together, so you wouldn't be able to really tell what is the verse and what's the purport, if you get the idea. This is a summary study. So, first of all, though, the book itself, Srila Rupa Goswami's book, begins with the introduction. It begins with the introduction. Srila Prabhupada has written the preface sort of independently as his own relatively brief summary not summary of the book, but just summary of what is the idea behind the book, actually. That's the preface. And like I said, it's very nice. It's very interesting. It's very beautiful. The way Prabhupada puts it, of course, as always, is really outstanding. So then comes the first section of, you could say, the book proper, which is the introduction and the first chapter. And we normally just say that this is like a general introduction to the whole book. I know one part is called the introduction anyway, but that's really what it is. It is the book is introducing itself, you could say. Then, so that is referred to as the first wave. In oceans, you get waves. Yes. I remember back in the old days here in Durban, we would fairly regularly go to, in those days, Battery Beach. The whole temple would go, a few times a year. And I remember, because I was, from a sort of marine background to some degree, I remember almost every time, probably every time, saving at least the life of one devotee. Seriously, really, no joking at all. How many times we dragged devotees sort of spluttering out of the water. It was really quite something. Oh gosh. So yes, every ocean has sides, and on the sides you get the waves coming, and the waves break on the beaches. So that introduction, the first part, the introduction and the first chapter, which really forms a general introduction to the entire book, we call that wave number 1. Then wave number 2 is from chapter 2 to chapter 16. And it is divided into 3 subsections, subwaves. The first is, the subject matter overall from chapter 2 to chapter 16, the subject matter is sadhana bhakti. Sadhana basically meaning practice. You practice something when you're not perfect at it. So the idea is, these chapters, it's the great majority of the whole Eastern wave. Chapter 2 to chapter 16, there's only 19 chapters. It's about sadhana bhakti, how to practice, how to learn and just get into devotional service and really start becoming a devotee and becoming qualified to some degree as a devotee. So there are 3 subsections, as we said. The first subsection is from chapter 2 to chapter 5, inclusive, and that's basically introducing the subject of sadhana bhakti. What is it? What is sadhana bhakti? In quite some detail. Then the second subsection is from chapter 6 to chapter 14. There the subject matter is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. There are 2 types of sadhana bhakti. Devotional service in practice, or devotional service on the level of that you're learning it, how to do it, and you're trying and you're being instructed and directed very sort of clearly. So Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is from chapter 6 to chapter 14. And Vaidhi, literally, Vaidhi means rules, regulations. So the first part of devotional service in practice, learning how to do devotional service, is when you are doing devotional service, practicing devotional service under rules and regulations given by scripture and given by the spiritual master. Then the third subpart of the second wave is chapters 15 and 16. And the subject there is, it's a second type of sadhana bhakti, generally a considerably more advanced part, but still it's in the realm of practice and learning. It's not in the realm of perfection. And that's called Raganuga sadhana bhakti. Generally, or often, Prabhupada translates this term Raganuga as spontaneous, the implication of which is basically along the lines that you're not really dependent on rules and regulations. You've pretty much already got it, what you need to do, but you've still got to practice. In general, it's a more advanced stage, and we're not going to go into it now, but when the time comes after, it's going to be obviously in the later part of the seminar after several weeks or something like that. Then we'll definitely go into it in detail, and it'll probably be a fairly eye-opening experience. So that's chapters 15 and 16. And then is the third wave. There are 4 waves in this eastern side. So this third wave is chapters 17 and 18, which are dealing with bhava bhakti, which is not part of practice. It's part of perfect devotional service. So of course one can learn at any point, but it's definitely not part of that stage of devotional service where it's really like you are at school. And you are really getting trained and directed and learning things and studying things. Bhava Bhakti is part of perfect devotional service, pure devotional service. And it's beyond sadhana. Technically speaking, It is part of what is called sadhya bhakti. Sadhya means is spelled S-A-D-H-Y-A. Sadhana, well, if you've got your course material with you, you'll see that term there, S-A-D-H-A-N-A. Sadhya, S-A-D-H-Y-A. Sadhana meaning practice, sadhya meaning perfect. Yes, and then the fourth wave is chapter 19 on its own, and it's dealing with prema bhakti. It's just a brief and relatively simple, in fact quite simple, introduction into the subject of prema bhakti, which is the perfection of life, the goal of life. Prema pumarto mahan. Lord Caitanya said that prema, Krishna prema, pure love for Krishna, is the great goal of life. All right. So there you go. Now, this book originally is, of course, by Srila Rupa Goswami, as we mentioned. And Rupa Goswami, just to help us with our perspective on the book, let us read a couple of verses from Caitanya Charitamrita, which are describing Srila Rupa Goswami and describing his qualification. Rupa Goswami is one of the 6 Goswamis, but Srila Prabhupada, generally, he's counted as the leader of the 6 Goswamis. Although Sanatana Goswami is his older brother, and therefore is senior in that sense. And even though, interestingly enough, Rupa Goswami addresses Sanatana Goswami as his spiritual master and relates to him as a spiritual master, but still Rupa Goswami is considered senior, and his qualification, his level of Krishna consciousness is considered higher. Yes. All right, so let us read here. What is this now? This is now, just before I do that, this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami has compiled it from instructions given to him by Lord Caitanya when they met in Prayag, modern-day Allahabad, to my knowledge. And Lord Caitanya instructed Rupa Goswami for 10 days, 10 days non-stop, more or less. And so Rupa Goswami compiled Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu from those teachings, plus other. Rupa Goswami has written numerous books, at least a fair number of books, of which Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, is the chief. But to a large extent, what he has presented in these books, he acquired from Lord Caitanya during that 10-day period. Those teachings are summarized, all those teachings, in the 19th chapter of Madhya Lila of Caitanya Charitamrita. It's titled Instructions to Rupa Goswami. Yeah. So I'm going to read what is that Madhya Lila chapter 19, verse 1, just to give us a little perspective on Srila Rupa Goswami. So it's the first verse of that special chapter dedicated to Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Rupa Goswami. it's the first verse, so it's a very foundational verse in that regard. Vrindavaniyam rasakeli vartam kalena loktam nijashakti mutka sanchari rupe vyatanotpanasa prabhur vido prag eva lokas srishtim. Before the creation of this cosmic manifestation, the Lord enlightened the heart of Lord Brahma with the details of the creation and manifested the Vedic knowledge. In exactly the same way, Lord Caitanya, being anxious to revive the Vrindavan pastimes of Lord Krishna, impregnated the heart of Rupa Goswami with spiritual potency. By this potency, Srila Rupa Goswami could revive the activities of Krishna in Vrindavan, activities almost lost to memory. In this way, he spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. I'll read one more verse. It is, it's two verses together. Majjha Lila chapter 19. Is it three verses? My Lord. I think it's two. I think it's verses 118 and 119. Kalena Vrindavana Keli Varta Luptetitam Kya Payatum Vishishya Kripamritena Vishishecha Devas Tatraiva Rupam Cha Sanatanam Cha. In the course of time, the transcendental news of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan was almost lost. To enunciate explicitly those transcendental pastimes, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Prayag empowered Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami with the nectar of his mercy to carry out this work in Vrindavan. So those are a couple of verses. There's a number of verses in that chapter glorifying Rupa Goswami. And of course that was also mentioning Sanatan. An interesting, somewhat esoteric point, but it's a point about Rupa Goswami and his position amongst the other Goswamis, is that all of them are manjaris in Krishna Lila. We discussed this, of course, in our seminar on the six Goswamis some weeks ago. Some of you will have been there, but I don't think all of you. So Rupa Goswami amongst the six Goswamis, in Vrindavan he is Rupa Manjari. And Rupa Manjari is the chief of the Manjaris. And the other of the six Goswamis, they're also Manjaris, including Sanatan, but they're all Manjaris who are serving under Rupa Manjari. So again, it gives just a little perspective on the position, the special position of Rupa Goswami. And those Manjaris, their position is special, well, in many ways, but particularly because they are very young. They're very young. None of them are more than perhaps at the most 8 years old. Some of them are less than 5. In other words, they really are little girls. And they're not sort of mature physically or psychologically or as mature as the Sakhis, who are the direct girlfriends of Srimati Radharani, who are basically her peers in terms of age, the same age. Even Lalita is very slightly older than Radharani. So when Radha and Krishna have their most intimate transcendental pastimes, the Sakhis, who are their age, feel they must leave, and they do leave. And the Manjaris stay because they are at least in certain terms on a surface level, they're not really tuned in to such types of interactions. So therefore they assist Radha and Krishna even in the very intimate loving pastimes in Vrindavan. And because they do that, they know a lot about these things. And then in Caitanya Leela, they become the 6 Goswamis, who are, of course, they're born, they go through childhood and youth, but their main time was in their adulthood. And they compiled so many amazing literatures. Yes, and in a sense, it's quite true. There's definitely connection between their ability to present Krishna consciousness, not only but including information about the relationship between Srimati Radharani and Krishna. To present all of that and just anything about Krishna consciousness in the most authoritative ways of any of the associates of Lord Caitanya. Yes. So that's, another interesting little perspective. I want to, before we actually directly launch into the text, into the book, I want to read a few verses glorifying Rupa and Sanatan, actually. Glorifying Rupa and Sanatan. These verses are from Bhakti Ratnakara, which is a sort of well-established and well-known Gaudiya Vaishnava literature, which Prabhupada quotes from on numerous occasions in the course of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So these are just very nice verses. I like these verses. So just please bear with me for a couple of minutes. It is well known that Sri Rupa Goswami was the life of the associates of the Lord. A large number of the associates of the Lord tried to sing the glories of Sanatana and Rupa, but could not describe them completely. All glories to Sanatana and Rupa, my very life, who gave direction to countless people. They were the only persons who knew the Vaishnava practices. Within Vrindavan, they were the reservoirs of natural love and mercy. They were oceans of kindness and friends of the poor. They were the foremost amongst devotees. Only Sri Rupa and Sanatan knew how to behave according to the teachings of the Bhagavat and other bhakti scriptures. All 3 worlds praised their characters. The dust of their lotus feet cooled the earth from the scorching rays of the sun of Kali. They continually worshipped Sri Vyasadeva and the holy feet of Sri Radha. All glories to Sri Rupa and Sanatan, the jewels of all ascetics, who had unflinching devotion to Sri Radha and Krishna. Giving up all worldly pleasures, they sang the glories of the groves of Vrindavan and the feet of Sri Radha. Therefore these 2 brothers were gifts from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the ocean of mercy. And in their absence, I have become an orphan. Hare Krishna. All right. So let us go into the preface, which is Srila Prabhupada's own composition and is really establishing, setting forth, what is this book? What is this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? What is this nectar of devotion? So the way we'll do this The way we'll do this, it's the same way for those of you who are participating in our Nectar of Instruction seminar. Because we are going here into a certain amount of detail. We will go paragraph by paragraph. We won't read each paragraph, but we'll sort of summarize each paragraph briefly and try and bring out the main points that Prabhupada brings out. So the first paragraph, I don't know if you have a copy of Nectar of Devotion. It would be an excellent idea to get one if you don't. If you want, I can give you a digital copy. Which has the page numberings as I have them. Because there are many versions of Nectar of Devotion. There are many versions. And, with different numbers of pages. So if I say here, page 1, or say, page 10, paragraph 3, and you open your version, then, it's extremely I would say it's inevitable. You're going to find something else, and it's going to be a bit otherwise. Yeah, really. So if you'd like, I can make available this. It's just copied out of the folio, the latest super folio. Yeah. So anyway, page 1, paragraph 1, let's go into it. Paragraph 1, 1, 2, 3, and 4. What now? And 5, what? And 6. Yes. 6 and even 7. Yeah. The first so many paragraphs, 5, 6, or 7 or so, they're more historical, giving like biographical background about Rupa Goswami. What was his life history? So, in the first paragraph, Srila Prabhupada makes the point that, that Nectar of Devotion is a summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which was written in Sanskrit. It's not written in Bengali. It's written in Sanskrit, but using Bengali alphabet. Yes. And Prabhupada points out how he was the chief of the 6 Goswamis, first met Lord Caitanya. He first met Lord Caitanya in Ramakeli, where he was living. He and Sanatan and Anupam, the third brother, were living. And then there, Rupa Goswami initiated them as Rupa and Sanatan. Of course, they had become kind of integrated into the Muslim society, by having been engaged by the Nawab Hussain Shah, the ruler of Bengal, as very prominent members of the Bengali government. Sanatan was Sakara Malik. He was the prime minister. Malik means the chief, isn't it? Something like the chief. Huh?
Chief and owner. Chief.
Okay, Malik, yeah. And owner. It's a name of Krishna, actually. Malik is a name of Krishna, yes. He's the big chief. So Sakara Malik, Sanatan Goswami, was the prime minister. You can't really get any higher except for the Nawab himself. So he was basically running the government of Bengal, and Rupa was Dabya Kas, He was something like, sometimes you read private secretary, sometimes perhaps more often you read the treasurer, or not just treasurer, but minister of finance. So they both had very important roles, and particularly Sanatan. So Prabhupada doesn't go into the whole story, but it's a fact that, first of all, Rupa escaped. The Nawab, they asked Nawab, can you just release us from government service? He wouldn't, because they are performing such important service, particularly Sanatan. So Sanatan, he couldn't get away. Rupa escaped first, and then met Lord Caitanya in Prayag, got instructed, and then carried on from there. Sanatan escaped later. So they'd become so integrated into the Muslim society, at least in a very superficial sense, that they had been ostracized. They had basically been kicked out, really kicked out strongly from the Brahminical society that they were born in. They were Saraswat Brahmins. Yeah, not all Brahmins are equal, and Saraswat Brahmins are, sort of the least equal. They're the highest. Saraswat Brahmins are the highest of the different orders of Brahmins, but they got rejected completely. Although they had not actually adopted, they were not eating meat, for example, or any of those things. But externally, if you looked at them, you'd think it's a Muslim. They dressed and sort of, they had the beards and the different trappings of Islam. Yeah. So despite that, when they met Lord Caitanya, despite that, they were great Vaishnavas, and they were practicing Krishna consciousness. Even Rupa Goswami wrote one very beautiful book. It's called Hansadutta, short book. It's Lalita instructing a Hansa, a swan, to take a message to Krishna, who's now in Mathura, to take a message describing what things are like in Vrindavan now he's left, and particularly how Srimati Radharani is now that Krishna's left Vrindavan. This book he wrote before meeting Lord Caitanya. So, in other words, they were just very great Vaishnavas already, even though externally they looked like, and they sort of associated with Muslims to a fair degree. So Prabhupada points out this sort of thing in the first paragraph, and then goes on the second paragraph. He points out that how it was Lord Chaitanya's mercy to accept Rupa and Sanatan in this way, but that was, Lord Caitanya was like that. Prabhupada points out he also accepted Haridas Thakur, who was actually born in a family of Muslims. In other words, he had been more deeply kind of, you could say, superficially implicated. And so Lord Caitanya accepted him and made him the Acharya, Namacharya, the foremost authority on the chanting of the holy names in his whole entourage. As such a significant thing. that Haridas Thakur was the main authority amongst the followers of Lord Caitanya on the chanting of the holy names. The greatest authority and the greatest practitioner. And, I'm sure we've all heard he chanted 300,000 names a day. It equates to 180 or something rounds a day. And, it's Pandavan Nirjala Ekadasi tomorrow. Anyone who wants to get an idea, what was it like? Give it a try. You can report back, because I will not be doing it. Yeah. But, one person, Satyanandan Maharaj, told me a few years ago, he had been doing, or maybe I think was still doing, a special vow for 1 month in Kartik, chanting 300,000 names a day. Yeah, and we met him in Alalana, near Jagannath Puri. Somehow or other we bumped into him. And he was still doing it. Sure, anyway, he really looked like an avadhuta at the time. And he said, it's so demanding, chanting 180 rounds a day or whatever it is. It's so demanding. You literally have no time for anything else. Even while you're eating, you got to keep chanting. Yeah. You just got to keep chanting. Otherwise you can't do it. And he said, it just gives an idea of what level Haridas Thakur was on. It was another sort of level altogether. But this was Lord Chaitanya's way. He was not into formalities. He was into the heart of everything and everyone. And so he recognized these devotees, these personalities, as his devotees. And he accepted them and gave them great responsibilities. Then in paragraph 3, for those of you who are doing this seminar in order to get a credit for this course for Bhakti Shastri, let me tell you that in paragraph 3 there is a point which you would be well advised to focus on and just really to learn, memorize. It's quite possible you'll be asked the question, what is Lord Chaitanya's main principle? And the answer to that question is found. Are any of you doing it for Bhakti Shastri? Anyway, okay. The question is, let me just tell you what the question is. What is Lord Chaitanya's universal principle? So it is found in paragraph 3. In fact, basically the whole paragraph pretty much. Let me read the 3rd paragraph of the preface. Lord Chaitanya's principle is universal. Anyone who knows the science of Krishna and is engaged in the service of the Lord is accepted as being in a higher position than a person born in the family of a Brahmin. That is the original principle accepted by all Vedic literatures, especially by Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The principle of Lord Chaitanya's movement in educating and elevating everyone to the exalted post of a Goswami is taught in the Nectar of Devotion. So there you go, devotees who are taking the seminar for getting Bhakti Shastri, you may be asked that question. What is Lord Chaitanya's universal principle? There it is. So then, the fourth paragraph, the last paragraph on this page, according to the way my Nectar of Devotion is structured, it's basically more history. It's basically more history. Well, actually, Prabhupada mentions how the brothers met Lord Chaitanya in Ramakeli and then decided to quit. So an interesting point, which you may well be asked about also, would you believe, devotees? Aren't we being so helpful? A very interesting, it's a very interesting point, actually. When Rupa Goswami, let's see, what now? Yeah, Rupa Goswami. When Rupa Goswami left home and left the service of the Muslim government and just surrendered totally to Lord Chaitanya and became the great scholar, preacher, devotee, Rupa Goswami, he was a wealthy person. Prabhupada says that his accumulated savings in gold coins equaled millions of dollars and filled a large boat. Yeah. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. All right. So Prabhupada says that 50%, Prabhupada says, he divided the money in a very exemplary manner, which should be followed by devotees in particular and by humanity in general. 50% of his accumulated wealth was distributed to the Krishna-conscious persons, namely the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. 25% was distributed to relatives, and 25% was kept against emergency expenditures and personal difficulties. Yeah, so that's the example of Rupa Goswami, which is again another point. Devotees doing this for Bhakti Shastri, make a note of that. All right? How did Rupa Goswami divide up his vast accumulated savings? And an interesting point to note, is that Srila Prabhupada, when he did the same thing, he left money for his family. Even though he took sannyas and, he was totally renounced person, and he was using whatever he could in service of the Lord, but he left some money to his family. Yeah. For his wife until she died, and his sons until he left his body. Okay. Just a sec. Our Instagram has a limit of 1 hour. I'm going to go on just for another 5 minutes maybe, and then we'll stop in 5 minutes. Just want to finish this little bit here. And the only problem is the Instagram devotees have to log in again. It'll take a minute. So, yeah. They are coming back, storming back. Okay. Right, so yeah. So where are we? We're still in paragraph 1. Bottom, we're at the end of paragraph 1. And how Rupa Goswami divided up his savings, his vast savings, when he renounced everything and left home. And Prabhupada makes the point, it's in the same paragraph actually, what I refer to as paragraph 1 of page 2, but it's just an extension of the 4th paragraph on page 1. That Sanatana Goswami, Sakara Malik, when he finally left home, a little later, not much later, but a little later, then he was able to utilize some of that money for an emergency, saving his life and letting him escape. Yeah, okay. So then in the second paragraph on page 2, the continuation of the last paragraph of page 1 being the first paragraph, Prabhupada just mentions how Rupa Goswami met Lord Chaitanya at Prayag and got instructed there. And Prabhupada says these teachings form the basis of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, that particular book. And then in the next paragraph, Prabhupada explains how Rupa Goswami, having been instructed by Lord Chaitanya in Prayag, then elaborated on those instructions, Prabhupada says, with profound knowledge of revealed scriptures and authoritative references from various Vedic literatures. And Prabhupada refers to the verse which is there at the beginning, which we chanted, how they were learned scholars, scrutinizingly studied all the Vedic literatures to establish the cult of Lord Chaitanya on the authorized principles of Vedic knowledge. Hare Krishna. So there you go, devotees. That's our first session, and we're just starting to break into things a little bit. And we will see you all, and all of you too. We got online here, how many we got? We got 420 people. We got 425 people. Very good. So thank you for tuning in, and we've got an extra about 15 or something here in the temple. We got about 440 devotees. Okay, Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, Facebook, Haribol, see you later.